Before it was known for country music and whiskey, Tennessee was home to America's most advanced ancient civilization. And what happened to them will shock you. Long before European explorers set foot in what we now call Tennessee, this land pulsed with the rhythm of sophisticated societies. The Mississippian culture, flourishing from roughly 800 to 1600 CE, created urban centers that rivaled anything in medieval Europe. Their capital, Cahokia, located just across the Mississippi River, influenced settlements throughout the Tennessee Valley. These ancient peoples weren't simple hunter-gatherers. They were master engineers, astronomers, and artists. In Tennessee, they built Moundville-style ceremonial centers, with earthen pyramids that served as temples and burial grounds. The Pinson Mounds in Madison County stand as testament to their architectural prowess, massive earthworks that required coordinated labor from thousands of people. What made these civilizations so advanced? They developed sophisticated agricultural systems, growing corn, beans, and squash in carefully planned fields. They created intricate trade networks that stretched from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Shell from the Atlantic coast, copper from the Great Lakes, and obsidian from the Rocky Mountains all found their way to Tennessee settlements. But perhaps most remarkably, they developed complex social hierarchies and religious systems. The famous Spiro Mounds artifacts, many of which originated in Tennessee, reveal a society with skilled artisans creating ceremonial objects of stunning beauty and complexity. Then, mysteriously, this civilization began to collapse. Climate change, warfare, disease, and social upheaval all played roles. By the time Europeans arrived, the great mound-building societies had largely vanished, leaving behind only their earthen monuments and the descendants who would become the historic Native American tribes. The Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, and Choctaw peoples who inhabited Tennessee when Europeans arrived were the inheritors of this ancient legacy. The Cherokee, in particular, had developed one of the most sophisticated Native American societies in North America. Sequoyah, a Cherokee silversmith, created something unprecedented in Native American history, a written syllabary for the Cherokee language. This innovation allowed the Cherokee to publish newspapers, write constitutions, and maintain written records. The Cherokee Phoenix, published in both Cherokee and English, was the first Native American newspaper in the United States. The Cherokee had established a capital at Nuakota in Georgia, but their territory extended deep into Tennessee. They built permanent towns, practiced agriculture, and had developed a complex political system with a principal chief and a council. Many Cherokee had adopted European-style farming, some even owning enslaved people and living in houses similar to their white neighbors. Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto was likely the first European to traverse Tennessee in 1540, following ancient Native American trails. His expedition brought devastating diseases that decimated native populations, a tragedy that would be repeated throughout the Americas. French explorers Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet mapped the Mississippi River system in the 1670s, while René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de la Salle, claimed the entire Mississippi Valley for France in 1682. This included much of what would become Tennessee. The French established trading posts and developed relationships with native tribes, but their presence in Tennessee remained limited. They were more interested in the fur trade and controlling river routes than in permanent settlement. British traders from Virginia and the Carolinas began penetrating the Tennessee region in the late 1600s and early 1700s. They established trading relationships with Cherokee towns, exchanging manufactured goods for deerskins and furs. These early encounters would set the stage for the complex relationships between Europeans and Native Americans that would define Tennessee's colonial period. The story of Tennessee's European settlement begins with a group of remarkable men known as the Long Hunters. These were frontiersmen who would disappear into the wilderness for months at a time, hunting and exploring the vast territories beyond the Appalachian Mountains. Daniel Boone is the most famous of these Long Hunters, but Tennessee's history is equally tied to men like Elisha Walden, who gave his name to Walden's Ridge, and Dr. Thomas Walker, who explored much of eastern Tennessee in the 1750s. These men followed ancient Native American trails, including the Great Indian Warpath, which ran through the Tennessee Valley. The Long Hunters discovered a land of incredible abundance. Massive herds of buffalo grazed in the central Tennessee valleys. Elk, deer, and bear were so numerous that hunters could take hundreds of hides in a single expedition. The rivers teemed with fish, and the forests provided everything needed for survival. But this abundance came at a cost. the Long Hunters' activities disrupted Native American hunting grounds and began the process of environmental change that would transform Tennessee's landscape. The Cherokee called this region the Bloody Ground because it was contested territory where different tribes hunted and sometimes fought. James Robertson and John Sevier emerged as the most important leaders of early Tennessee settlement. Robertson, known as the Father of Tennessee, led the first permanent settlement at Nashboro, now Nashville, in 1779. This was an incredibly dangerous undertaking. The settlement was hundreds of miles from the nearest European community, surrounded by Native American tribes who were increasingly hostile to white encroachment. The Nashboro settlers built Fort Nashboro on the bluffs overlooking the Cumberland River. The fort's design reflected the constant threat of attack. It was constructed as a series of connected cabins with a central courtyard, allowing defenders to move safely between buildings during sieges. Meanwhile, in eastern Tennessee, John Sevier was establishing settlements in the Holston and Nolichucky River valleys. Sevier would become a legendary figure in Tennessee history, serving as the first governor of the short-lived state of Franklin and later as Tennessee's first governor. Tennessee's role in the American Revolution was pivotal, though often overlooked in traditional histories. The frontier settlements found themselves caught between British forces, their Native American allies, and the struggle for American independence. The Cherokee, led by chiefs like Dragging Canoe, initially allied with the British, seeing them as a potential check on American expansion into their territories. This led to a series of conflicts known as the Cherokee Wars, which raged from 1776 to 1794. Dragging Canoe was a remarkable leader who understood that compromise with American settlers would ultimately lead to Cherokee dispossession. He established new towns along Chickamauga Creek and waged a guerrilla war against frontier settlements. His warriors, known as the Chickamauga Cherokee, became some of the most effective Native American fighters in the Southeast. The frontier settlers responded with their own military campaigns. John Sevier led numerous expeditions against Cherokee towns, earning him the nickname Nolichucky Jack. These campaigns were brutal affairs that often targeted non-combatants and destroyed entire communities. But Tennessee's most famous Revolutionary War contribution came at the Battle of Kings Mountain in 1780. When British Major Patrick Ferguson threatened to march over the mountains and destroy the frontier settlements, the Over-Mountain Men responded with fury. Isaac Shelby, John Sevier, and other frontier leaders gathered nearly 1,000 men and marched to confront Ferguson's force. The Battle of Kings Mountain was a complete American victory that helped turn the tide of the war in the South. Ferguson was killed, and his entire force was either killed or captured. The victory at Kings Mountain demonstrated the fighting prowess of Tennessee frontiersmen and established their reputation as formidable warriors. These same men would later fight in the War of 1812 under Andrew Jackson, earning Tennessee the nickname the Volunteer State. Tennessee's path to statehood was complicated by politics, geography, and the question of slavery. The territory that would become Tennessee was originally part of North Carolina, but the state ceded it to the federal government in 1789 to help pay Revolutionary War debts. This created the territory south of the River Ohio, with William Blount as territorial governor. Blount was a fascinating figure, a land speculator, politician, and one of the signers of the Constitution. He established the territorial capital at Knoxville and worked tirelessly to promote settlement and development. The territory's population grew rapidly, reaching the 60,000 residents required for statehood by 1796. But the admission process was complicated by national politics. Federalists opposed Tennessee statehood because they expected the new state to support Thomas Jefferson's Democratic-Republican Party. Despite political opposition, Tennessee was admitted as the 16th state on June 1, 1796. John Sevier became the first governor, serving 6 terms and establishing many of the precedents for Tennessee government. Early Tennessee was a rough frontier society where personal honor and physical courage were highly valued. Dueling was common among the upper classes, and violence was often the preferred method of settling disputes. Andrew Jackson, who arrived in Nashville as a young lawyer in 1788, embodied this frontier culture. Jackson quickly established himself as a successful lawyer, land speculator, and politician. He married Rachel Donaldson Robards in a ceremony that would later cause political scandal when opponents claimed she was still married to her first husband. Jackson fought numerous duels defending his wife's honor, carrying bullets in his body from these encounters for the rest of his life. The early Tennessee economy was based on agriculture, particularly cotton in the western regions and tobacco in the east. The invention of the cotton gin in 1793 made cotton cultivation extremely profitable, leading to the expansion of slavery throughout middle and western Tennessee. Nashville emerged as the state's commercial center, with its location on the Cumberland River, making it a natural hub for trade and transportation. The city's growth was aided by the construction of the Natchez Trace, a 440-mile road connecting Nashville to Natchez, Mississippi. The War of 1812 transformed Tennessee from a frontier territory into a major player in national politics, largely due to the emergence of Andrew Jackson as a military hero and political leader. When war was declared against Britain in 1812, Tennessee responded enthusiastically. The state's frontier culture had produced a generation of men experienced in warfare, and they were eager to fight for their country. Governor Willie Blount called for volunteers, and the response was overwhelming. Jackson was appointed Major General of the Tennessee Militia and led 2,500 volunteers toward New Orleans. However, the expedition was called off, and Jackson was ordered to dismiss his troops in Mississippi. Instead of abandoning his men hundreds of miles from home, Jackson marched them back to Tennessee at his own expense, earning the nickname Old Hickory for his toughness. The Creek War of 1813 to 1814 gave Jackson his first major military victory. The Creek Nation was divided between those who wanted to accommodate American expansion and the Red Sticks, who sought to resist it. The Red Sticks' attack on Fort Mims in Alabama, which killed over 500 people, prompted Jackson to lead Tennessee volunteers into Creek territory. The campaign culminated in the Battle of Horseshoe Bend on March 27, 1814. Jackson's force, which included Tennessee volunteers, Cherokee allies, and regular army troops, completely defeated the Red Stick Creeks. The victory ended Creek resistance and opened millions of acres of land to American settlement. But Jackson's greatest triumph came at the Battle of New Orleans on January 8, 1815. British forces, fresh from their victory over Napoleon, launched a massive assault on New Orleans. Jackson's army, which included Tennessee and Kentucky volunteers, regular army troops, pirates, and free men of color, inflicted a devastating defeat on the British. The victory made Jackson a national hero and launched his political career. Ironically, the battle was fought after the peace treaty had been signed, but before news reached America. The victory boosted American morale and made Jackson the most popular man in America. Tennessee volunteers played crucial roles in both battles, and their performance reinforced the state's reputation for producing excellent soldiers. This military tradition would continue throughout Tennessee's history. Andrew Jackson's presidency from 1829 to 1837 marked the height of Tennessee's influence in national politics. Jackson brought a new democratic spirit to American government, championing the rights of common people against aristocratic privilege. Jackson's political philosophy, known as Jacksonian democracy, emphasized majority rule, limited government, and opposition to special privileges. He dismantled the Second Bank of the United States, which he viewed as a corrupt institution benefiting the rich. But Jackson's presidency also had a dark side, particularly regarding Native American policy. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 authorized the federal government to negotiate treaties exchanging tribal lands for Western territory. The Cherokee, who had adopted European American culture and had a written constitution, challenged removal in the courts. In Worcester v. Georgia, the Supreme Court ruled that Georgia could not extend its laws over Cherokee territory. Jackson allegedly responded, "John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it." The result was the Trail of Tears, one of the darkest chapters in American history. Between 1838 and 1839, approximately 16,000 Cherokee were forced from their homes and marched to Oklahoma. An estimated 4,000 died during the journey from disease, starvation, and exposure. Tennessee was deeply involved in this tragedy. Many Cherokee lived in eastern Tennessee, and the state profited from their lands. Some Tennesseans, like Congressman Davy Crockett, opposed removal, but they were in the minority. Crockett's opposition to Indian removal contributed to his political downfall in Tennessee. After losing his seat in 1835, he declared, "You may all go to hell, and I will go to Texas." He died at the Alamo in 1836, becoming a legend in the process. Meanwhile, Tennessee continued to grow and develop. The state's population reached over 800,000 by 1840. Memphis was founded in 1819, and quickly became a major cotton port on the Mississippi River. The construction of railroads began to transform Tennessee's economy and society. The Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad, completed in 1854, connected Middle Tennessee to the Southeast's rail network. These improvements made Tennessee more prosperous, but also more connected to national tensions over slavery. By 1860, Tennessee was a prosperous state with a complex relationship to slavery. While slavery was legal and economically important, the state had significant populations of small farmers who owned no enslaved people. Eastern Tennessee, with its mountainous terrain, had relatively few enslaved people and strong Unionist sentiment. Middle Tennessee, centered on Nashville, had moderate numbers of enslaved people and was politically divided. Western Tennessee, with its fertile cotton lands, had the highest concentration of enslaved people and strongest pro-Confederate sentiment. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860, Tennessee initially resisted secession. Governor Isham Harris called a special session, but voters rejected a secession convention in February 1861. However, the attack on Fort Sumter and Lincoln's call for troops changed everything. Harris refused to provide Tennessee troops to fight against other southern states, and public opinion shifted dramatically. In a second referendum on June 8, 1861, Tennessee voted to secede by more than 2-1. But the vote revealed deep divisions. Eastern Tennessee voted overwhelmingly against secession, some counties by 10-1. This created a situation where Tennessee was officially Confederate, but a significant portion remained loyal to the Union. Andrew Johnson, Tennessee's senator and future president, was the only Southern senator to remain in Congress after secession. Johnson, a Democrat from Eastern Tennessee, became a symbol of Unionist resistance in the South. The Civil War came early to Tennessee. The state's strategic location made it a crucial battleground. Confederate forces initially controlled most of the state, but Union victories at Fort Henry and Fort Donelson changed that. Ulysses S. Grant's capture of these forts in February 1862 was his first major victory. The victories opened the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers to Union gunboats, making Confederate positions untenable. Nashville fell to Union forces in February 1862, making it the first Confederate state capital to be captured. The city remained under Union control for the rest of the war, serving as a major supply base for Western operations. Tennessee witnessed some of the Civil War's bloodiest and most significant battles. The Battle of Shiloh, fought near the Tennessee-Mississippi border in April 1862, was one of the war's first major engagements and shocked both sides with its carnage. Confederate General Albert Sidney Johnston launched a surprise attack on Grant's army at Pittsburgh Landing. The first day of battle went well for the Confederates, but Johnston was killed, and Confederate momentum stalled. Grant, reinforced by Don Carlos Buell's army, counterattacked on the second day and drove the Confederates from the field. Shiloh resulted in over 23,000 casualties, more than all previous American wars combined. The battle demonstrated that the Civil War would be longer and bloodier than anyone had anticipated. It also established Grant's reputation for tenacity under pressure. The Battle of Stones River, Murfreesboro, at the end of 1862, was another massive engagement that showcased Tennessee's strategic importance. Confederate General Braxton Bragg attacked Union forces under William Rosecrans in a 3-day battle that resulted in over 24,000 casualties. Although tactically inconclusive, Stones River was a strategic Union victory because Bragg retreated, leaving Middle Tennessee under Union control. The battle also demonstrated the war's impact on Tennessee civilians, as the fighting raged through farms and towns, destroying property and displacing families. The Tullahoma Campaign of 1863 saw Rosecrans outmaneuver Bragg and force him to retreat to Georgia with minimal fighting. This brilliant campaign opened the way for the Union capture of Chattanooga, a crucial railroad hub that controlled access to the Deep South. The Battle of Chickamauga, in September 1863, fought just across the Tennessee-Georgia border, was the Confederacy's last major victory in the Western theater. Bragg's army defeated Rosecrans and besieged Chattanooga, but the victory was short-lived. Grant arrived in Chattanooga and broke the Confederate siege in the battles of Lookout Mountain and Missionary Ridge in November 1863. These victories opened the way for William T. Sherman's Atlanta campaign and marked the beginning of the end for the Confederacy in the West. The war's impact on Tennessee was devastating. Armies crisscrossed the state repeatedly, requisitioning supplies, destroying property, and disrupting normal life. guerrilla warfare was common, particularly in Middle Tennessee, where Confederate raiders like Nathan Bedford Forrest and John Hunt Morgan operated. Forrest, a Memphis slave trader before the war, became one of the Confederacy's most effective cavalry commanders. His raids on Union supply lines and his victory at the Battle of Bryce's Crossroads made him a legend, though his involvement in the Fort Pillow massacre tarnished his reputation. Tennessee's experience during Reconstruction was unique among Southern states. Because significant portions of the state had remained loyal to the Union, and because Andrew Johnson became president after Lincoln's assassination, Tennessee was readmitted to the Union in 1866, the first Confederate state to be restored. Johnson, who had served as military governor of Tennessee during the war, brought his own vision of Reconstruction to the presidency. His lenient policies toward the defeated South put him at odds with radical Republicans in Congress, ultimately leading to his impeachment in 1868. In Tennessee, Reconstruction politics were dominated by the struggle between Republicans, who included both white Unionists and freed slaves, and Democrats, who represented the old Confederate establishment. The Republican Party initially controlled the state government, led by Governor William Parson Brownlow. Brownlow, a Methodist minister and newspaper editor from eastern Tennessee, had been a fierce Unionist during the war. As governor, he pursued harsh policies against former Confederates, disenfranchising many and using the state militia to maintain order. The period saw significant advances for African Americans. The Freedmen's Bureau established schools throughout Tennessee, and Black Tennesseans gained the right to vote and hold office. Several African Americans served in the state legislature, and Nashville became a center of Black education with the founding of Fisk University in 1866. Fisk University quickly became one of the nation's premier Black institutions of higher learning. The Fisk Jubilee Singers, formed in 1871, toured internationally and introduced the world to African American spirituals, raising funds for the university and changing perceptions of Black culture. However, Reconstruction gains were short-lived. The Ku Klux Klan was founded in Pulaski, Tennessee in 1865 by former Confederate officers led by Nathan Bedford Forrest. The organization used violence and intimidation to suppress Black political participation and restore white Democratic control. By the 1870s, Democrats had regained control of Tennessee government through a combination of violence, legal restrictions, and economic pressure. The end of Reconstruction in 1877 solidified Democratic control and began the era of Jim Crow segregation. The Redeemer Democrats, who controlled Tennessee from the 1870s to the 1890s, pursued policies of fiscal conservatism, limited government, and white supremacy. They reduced state spending, particularly on education and social services, and enacted laws that effectively disenfranchised most Black voters. Despite these setbacks, Tennessee began to experience economic growth in the late 19th century. The state's mineral resources, particularly coal and iron ore, attracted industrial development. Birmingham, Alabama, and Chattanooga, Tennessee became major steel-producing centers. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw Tennessee transform from a primarily agricultural state to an increasingly industrial one. This transformation was driven by the state's abundant natural resources, improved transportation networks, and the availability of cheap labor. Coal mining became a major industry in eastern Tennessee and the Cumberland Plateau. The coal was high-quality bituminous coal, perfect for steel production and railroad fuel. Mining camps sprang up throughout the region, often in remote mountain valleys accessible only by narrow-gauge railroads. The mining industry brought both prosperity and problems. While it provided employment for thousands of Tennesseans, working conditions were often dangerous, and company towns gave mining companies enormous control over workers' lives. Labor disputes were common, sometimes erupting into violence. The Coal Creek War of 1891 to 1892 was one of the most significant labor conflicts in Tennessee history. When mine owners began using convict labor to break strikes and reduce wages, free miners rebelled. They freed convicts from stockades and fought pitched battles with state militia sent to restore order. The conflict highlighted the problems with Tennessee's convict lease system, which rented prisoners to private companies for labor. The system was profitable for the state and businesses, but created terrible conditions for prisoners and unfair competition for free workers. Iron and steel production also became important industries. The Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company, based in Birmingham but with extensive operations in Tennessee, became one of the South's largest industrial enterprises. Chattanooga emerged as a major manufacturing center, earning the nickname Dynamo of Dixie. The lumber industry exploited Tennessee's vast forests, particularly in the eastern mountains. Large lumber companies clear-cut millions of acres, floating logs down rivers to sawmills. This industry provided employment but also caused significant environmental damage. Nashville began to develop its own industrial base, with companies like DuPont establishing chemical plants in the area. The city also became a regional transportation hub, with railroads connecting it to markets throughout the Southeast and Midwest. Memphis grew rapidly as a cotton port and railroad center. The city's location on the Mississippi River made it a natural hub for trade between the agricultural South and industrial North. However, yellow fever epidemics in the 1870s temporarily devastated the city's population and economy. The development of hydroelectric power in the early 20th century provided cheap electricity for industrial development. The Tennessee River's numerous rapids and falls made it ideal for power generation, though major dam construction wouldn't begin until the New Deal era. The Great Depression hit Tennessee hard, as it did most of the rural South. Cotton prices collapsed, banks failed, and unemployment soared. Many Tennesseans left the state seeking work in northern industrial cities, beginning a migration pattern that would continue for decades. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal brought unprecedented federal involvement in Tennessee's development. The most significant program was the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, created in 1933 to develop the Tennessee River system for flood control, navigation, and electric power generation. The TVA was one of the New Deal's most ambitious programs, covering parts of 7 states but centered in Tennessee. The agency built a series of dams that transformed the Tennessee River from a flood-prone, shallow waterway into a series of deep lakes suitable for navigation and recreation. Norris Dam, completed in 1936, was the TVA's first major project. The dam created Norris Lake and provided electricity to rural areas that had never had electric power. The project also built the planned community of Norris, which served as a model for other New Deal communities. The TVA's impact on Tennessee was revolutionary. Cheap electricity attracted industries to the region, while flood control protected communities that had been regularly devastated by Tennessee River floods. The lakes created by TVA dams became major recreational attractions, laying the foundation for Tennessee's modern tourism industry. However, the TVA also had negative consequences. The dams flooded thousands of acres of farmland and forced many families to relocate. Some communities were completely submerged and archaeological sites were lost forever. The agency's focus on economic development sometimes came at the expense of environmental protection. World War II brought further changes to Tennessee. The federal government selected Oak Ridge as the site for uranium enrichment as part of the Manhattan Project. The secret city, built almost overnight, housed 75,000 people working on the atomic bomb. Oak Ridge represented the largest construction project in Tennessee history. The city was built from scratch in a remote area of eastern Tennessee, with workers living in hastily constructed housing and working in facilities they didn't fully understand. The secrecy surrounding the project was so complete that most workers didn't know they were helping build atomic weapons until after Hiroshima. The war also brought military training facilities to Tennessee. Camp Forrest near Tullahoma trained hundreds of thousands of soldiers, while the Volunteer Army ammunition plant in Chattanooga produced explosives for the war effort. Tennessee's agricultural sector was transformed during this period as well. Mechanization reduced the need for farm labor, accelerating the migration from rural areas to cities. The state's economy became increasingly diversified, with manufacturing, government, and services growing in importance relative to agriculture. The civil rights movement came to Tennessee in the 1950s and 1960s, challenging the Jim Crow system that had dominated the state since Reconstruction. Tennessee's response to civil rights was complex, with some areas showing relative moderation while others resisted change violently. Nashville became a major center of civil rights activity, largely due to the presence of several historically black colleges and universities. Fisk University, Tennessee State University, and Meharry Medical College provided leadership and institutional support for the movement. The Nashville student movement, led by figures like John Lewis and Diane Nash, pioneered the sit-in tactic that spread across the South. Beginning in February 1960, black college students began sitting at whites-only lunch counters in downtown Nashville, demanding service and facing arrest when refused. The Nashville sit-ins were notable for their organization, discipline, and ultimate success. The students received training in nonviolent resistance and maintained their composure despite verbal and physical abuse. After months of protests and economic pressure, Nashville's lunch counters were desegregated in May 1960. Memphis also played a crucial role in the civil rights movement, though the city's experience was more troubled. The assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at the Lorraine Motel on April 4, 1968, shocked the nation and led to riots in cities across America. King had come to Memphis to support striking sanitation workers who were demanding better wages and working conditions. The strike, which lasted 65 days, highlighted the economic inequalities that persisted despite legal victories and civil rights. The integration of Tennessee's schools proceeded gradually and sometimes violently. The Clinton High School crisis of 1956 saw federal troops called in to protect black students attempting to integrate the school. Similar scenes played out across the state as communities grappled with changing racial norms. Higher education integration was also contentious. James Meredith's enrollment at the University of Mississippi in 1962 required federal intervention, while the University of Tennessee integrated more peacefully in 1961 with the enrollment of Theodis Robinson. The Civil Rights era also saw significant changes in Tennessee politics. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 restored political participation to many black Tennesseans, leading to the election of African Americans to local and state offices for the first time since Reconstruction. Harold Ford Sr. became the first African American elected to Congress from Tennessee since Reconstruction, when he won a Memphis seat in 1974. His son, Harold Ford Jr., would later serve in the same seat, representing the continuation of black political progress in Tennessee. The period also saw the rise of the modern Republican Party in Tennessee. The party's Southern strategy appealed to white voters uncomfortable with civil rights changes, gradually shifting Tennessee from a Democratic stronghold to a competitive two-party state. While Tennessee grappled with social change, it was also experiencing a cultural renaissance that would make it famous worldwide. Nashville's emergence as Music City, USA began in the 1920s, but reached full flower in the post-World War II era. The Grand Ole Opry, which began as the WSM Barn Dance in 1925, became the longest-running radio show in American history. The show featured country music performers from across the South and helped establish Nashville as the center of the country music industry. The Opry's move to the Ryman Auditorium in 1943 gave it a permanent home that became known as the Mother Church of country music. The Ryman's excellent acoustics and intimate setting made it the perfect venue for country music, and performing there became the ultimate goal for country artists. Music Row, the area around 16th and 17th Avenues South, became the business center of the country music industry. Record labels, publishing companies, and recording studios concentrated in this area, creating a music industry infrastructure that attracted artists from around the world. The Nashville sound, developed in the 1950s and 1960s, represented a more polished, pop-influenced style of country music. Producers like Chet Atkins and Owen Bradley created a smoother sound that appealed to broader audiences, while maintaining country music's essential character. Artists like Patsy Cline, Jim Reeves, and Eddie Arnold became international stars performing in the Nashville sound style. The approach helped country music gain acceptance on mainstream radio and television, expanding its audience far beyond its traditional rural base. Memphis developed its own distinctive musical identity, becoming the birthplace of rock and roll. Sun Records, founded by Sam Phillips in 1952, recorded early works by Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Carl Perkins. Phillips famously said he was looking for a white man with the Negro sound and the Negro feel, and he found it in Elvis Presley. Presley's 1954 recording of That's All Right at Sun Records is often cited as the first rock and roll record. Stax Records, founded in Memphis in 1957, became one of the most important soul music labels. Artists like Otis Redding, Sam and Dave, and Booker T and the MGs created a distinctive Memphis soul sound that influenced popular music worldwide. The Muscle Shoals sound, developed just across the Tennessee River in Alabama, also had strong Tennessee connections. Many Nashville session musicians worked in Muscle Shoals, and the studios there recorded artists from across the musical spectrum. Tennessee's musical heritage extends beyond country and soul. The state has produced blues legends like B.B. King and Furry Lewis, jazz innovators like Chet Baker, and rock stars like Tina Turner. This musical diversity reflects Tennessee's complex cultural heritage and its position at the crossroads of American music. Today's Tennessee is a far cry from the rural, agricultural state of the early 20th century. The state has successfully diversified its economy while preserving and celebrating its unique cultural heritage, making it one of America's premier tourist destinations. Nashville has evolved into a major metropolitan area with a diversified economy. While music remains important, the city is also a center for healthcare, education, and finance. Vanderbilt University and its medical center are major employers and research institutions, while companies like HCA Healthcare have made Nashville a healthcare industry hub. The city's tourism industry has exploded in recent years, with visitors drawn by its music heritage, vibrant nightlife, and distinctive culture. The Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum, opened in 1967 and expanded several times, tells the story of country music and its impact on American culture. Broadway, Nashville's main entertainment district, features dozens of honky-tonks and music venues where visitors can hear live music every night of the week. The area has become a major tourist attraction, drawing millions of visitors annually. Memphis has also reinvented itself as a tourist destination, capitalizing on its musical heritage and cultural attractions. Graceland, Elvis Presley's former home, is one of America's most visited house museums, attracting over 600,000 visitors annually. Beale Street, the historic center of Memphis's music scene, has been restored and developed as an entertainment district. The street features live music venues, restaurants, and shops celebrating Memphis's musical heritage. The National Civil Rights Museum, built around the Lorraine Motel where Dr. King was assassinated, tells the story of the American civil rights movement. The museum has become one of the most important civil rights sites in the nation. Eastern Tennessee has developed a thriving tourism industry based on its natural beauty and outdoor recreation opportunities. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which straddles the Tennessee-North Carolina border, is America's most visited national park, attracting over 11 million visitors annually. Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge have become major tourist destinations, offering everything from outdoor adventures to family entertainment. Dollywood, Dolly Parton's theme park in Pigeon Forge, celebrates Appalachian culture while providing modern entertainment. The park preserves one of the largest remaining temperate deciduous forests in North America and provides habitat for black bears, elk, and hundreds of other species. Its mountains, waterfalls, and historic structures offer visitors a glimpse of Appalachian life and natural beauty. Chattanooga has transformed itself from an industrial city to a tourist destination focused on outdoor recreation and family attractions. The Tennessee Aquarium, opened in 1992, was one of the first major freshwater aquariums and helped revitalize the city's downtown. The city's location in the Tennessee River Gorge provides spectacular scenery and outdoor recreation opportunities. Rock City and Ruby Falls, tourist attractions developed in the 1920s and 1930s, continue to draw visitors to Lookout Mountain. Tennessee's journey from ancient Mississippian civilization to modern tourist destination reflects the broader American story of change, conflict, and renewal. The state's history encompasses some of America's greatest triumphs and darkest chapters, from the democratic ideals of Andrew Jackson to the tragedy of the Trail of Tears, from the heroism of civil rights activists to the creativity of its musicians. What makes Tennessee unique is how it has preserved and celebrated its complex heritage while adapting to modern realities. The state's tourism industry succeeds because it offers authentic experiences rooted in real history and culture, not manufactured attractions. Visitors to Tennessee can walk the same paths as Cherokee leaders and frontier settlers, stand where Civil War battles were fought, and hear music in the venues where legends were born. They can explore caves that sheltered ancient peoples, hike mountains that challenged early explorers, and experience the natural beauty that has inspired generations of Tennesseans. The state's musical heritage continues to evolve, with Nashville remaining a center for country music while also embracing other genres. The city's music scene includes everything from traditional bluegrass to contemporary pop, reflecting Tennessee's ongoing role in American musical culture. Tennessee's commitment to education and research, exemplified by institutions like Vanderbilt University, the University of Tennessee, and Oak Ridge National Laboratory, positions the state for continued growth and development. The state has successfully attracted high-tech industries while maintaining its traditional economic base. The challenges facing modern Tennessee include managing growth while preserving the qualities that make it special, addressing persistent poverty in some rural areas, and protecting its natural environment from development pressures. The state's success in meeting these challenges will determine its future. But Tennessee's greatest asset remains its people. Descendants of Native Americans, European settlers, enslaved Africans, and immigrants from around the world who have all contributed to the state's unique character. Their stories, preserved in museums, historic sites, and living traditions, continue to attract visitors from around the globe. As you explore Tennessee today, you're not just visiting tourist attractions, you're experiencing the living legacy of America's complex and fascinating history. From the ancient mounds of the Mississippian culture to the modern skylines of Nashville and Memphis, Tennessee tells the American story in all its complexity and contradiction. The state that gave America Andrew Jackson and Elvis Presley, the Trail of Tears and the Sit-In movement, country music and atomic energy, continues to evolve while honoring its past. In Tennessee, history isn't just something you read about, it's something you can touch, hear, and experience firsthand. Come to Tennessee and discover for yourself why this remarkable state continues to capture the imagination of visitors from around the world. Walk where history was made, hear the music that changed the world, and experience the natural beauty that has inspired generations. Tennessee awaits your discovery. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.